So your wallet is just itching to get empty. It's quite full after all, and few laptops can do the job as effectively as the HP Envy 16. In fact, this laptop is so popular, it practically gets a new iteration every single year. This year is no exception. The configuration we have here today is rocking Intel's i7 13700H series processor, 32 gigabytes of DDR5 memory, a fairly large 1 terabyte SSD. We also have RTX 4060 graphics with 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Additionally, we have a Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3 standards on board, and it's worth noting this is a 16-inch laptop. In today's review, we're going to see if the HP Envy is in fact something that you should be envious of, or if it's just a big fat laptop with a overinflated price tag. Either way, we're gonna find out. In terms of packaging contents, well, HP puts a little bit more effort here as you get a nice, clean, black, sleek box with a clear visual of the HP Envy 16. Once you remove the content seal and open up the box itself, inside first and foremost you have the Envy 16. Remove all that protective packaging around it, and here it is, a very familiar look to previous years. Now you also have a fairly large 200-watt charging adapter, which makes total sense given the kind of hardware we have on board, and of course the DC pin, the wall outlet charging cable piece itself as well, and finally some documentation and quick start material. For better or worse, the HP Envy 16 has nearly the same form factor it's had in 2022 and even in 2021, meaning not a whole lot has changed this year. Now with that said, of course, it's still a fairly sleek and modern looking machine, so you have that nice linear clean design, a full metallic exterior, soft edges, and generally speaking a very slim profile for a 16-inch laptop. However, the weight does peak at around 5.17 pounds, making it a fairly chunky machine to carry around for all-day travel. Now starting with the top side, like I mentioned, you have a clean, simple metallic exterior, no unnecessary textures, and also it's extremely fingerprint resistant, something I very much appreciate. And then in the center you have a nice clean logo of HP. All the I/O ports are located on either side of the laptop. So on one side you have a heat exhaust vent, followed by a semi-covered USB-A super speed port, a headphone jack, and for whatever odd reason, a micro SD card reader as opposed to a full-size SD card reader, which would have been much better from a compatibility perspective. On the other side, you have a DC charging port, one more USB-A super speed port, a HDMI 2.1 port, and my favorite part, two fully loaded Thunderbolt 4 USB-C ports. The bottom of the laptop also shares a similar metallic exterior like the rest of the machine. You'll also notice the top half is one massive air intake vent. After all, you do have a dual fan setup and a vapor chamber as well. You'll also notice on either corner you do have speaker grills, so this is a bottom and top firing speaker system with a total of 4 speakers. We'll do a sound test later on. Today's video is in partnership with Deltahub. This is not Batman's Batarang. Better yet, this is the Carpio 2.0 ergonomical wrist rest, specifically designed to minimize wrist injury, compression, and carpal tunnel syndrome. It is designed in a way that is extremely comfortable for your wrists. It's basically made with nice high quality silicone pads at the top on which the lower end of your palm rest basically rests on, and it glides freely with the movement of your hand while you're using the mouse because of its extremely well polished and smooth bottom finish. When used appropriately, this thing can significantly reduce wrist fatigue and as a result provide undisturbed productivity. To learn more about this game-changing wrist rest, I will leave a link in the video description below. Upon unfolding this laptop, you are presented with a generous amount of palm rest space. Given this is a 16-inch laptop, that does make total sense. You also have that clean metallic exterior with that iconic silver color here as well. Now at the center, you have a nice premium feeling glass surface finished trackpad, and you have a decent amount of surf real estate. I also appreciate the fact that the trackpad is tactile, it's well calibrated, and generally speaking, there's nothing bad to say about it. The keyboard is also pretty pleasant for the most part. So you have nice, well-labeled keys. You'll notice you have a decent amount of surface area per keycap, and HP likes to coat it in that same silver color for a matching design. Now, I will admit that the backlighting system is fairly weak over here and could do with some improvement. You'll also notice there are no 10 key pads on either side. Rather, we have these utterly useless grills. These things are not speaker grills. They are also not passive or active cooling vents. If you ever feel useless in life, just remember these things exist on this laptop. Nonetheless, of course, we also have a good typing experience. So you'll find that the actual keystrokes have a decent amount of key travel. They're tactile, but also have a degree of softness for a comfortable experience overall. The hinge over here seems like it's just barely surviving, and it's practically on welfare because, well, there is an insane amount of screen wobble with the hinge here. It's a single tier mechanism, and it can be a outright nuisance when you're typing rather assertively. Now, with that said, this is a common problem with a lot of HP laptops and one that they need to address sooner than later. Display fitting is decent, so you do have a fairly thick chin at the bottom, which can easily be slimmed down to get rid of that HP logo, but worry not, because you have nice, thin, and clean looking bezels on either side that provide a good degree of immersion. Now, on the very top, you have a fairly thin forehead, and you'll be happy to know you have a high quality 5 megapixel webcam with IR scanning readily available, so you have Windows Hello recognition technology enabled. The display here is totally awesome. Now, fair caveat, depending on where you are in the world, there are multiple configurations of display. This one here is technically the top display you can get. So we have a nice resolution of 2.8K with a 16:9 aspect ratio. This is a OLED panel which produces some amazing blacks and great contrast. Additionally, it is a low blue light display for minimum eye strain. You have a peak SDR brightness of up to 400 nits, providing plenty of brightness. You'll also be happy to know that you have a decent amount of viewing angles, so it's almost comparable to a traditional IPS display, and past that, a nice 120 Hz refresh rate. Finally, this is a multi-touch enabled display, which can be used as a secondary form of input, though you don't have a 180-degree tilt with the hinge, so it is fairly limited in its capacity overall. Now, as far as colors go, that's where things get really nice. You have a 100% DCI-P3 color gamut rating, which means color reproduction on here is fantastic and great for creative purposes like photo or video editing, for example. Performance is very beefy, so you do have a i7-13700H series processor. You can also get an i5 version as well. You do have 32 gigabytes of DDR5 memory, and additionally a RTX 4060 with 8 gigabytes of VRAM. This translates into great performance, so day-to-day activities like web browsing or word productivity are obviously going to be a no-brainer for this machine, but this laptop really excels in power productivity. For example, if you're doing programming or coding, you will have a great time with this machine, or 3D level studio animations on Blender, for example, are also a very smooth and viable process over here. Now, even the most demanding of activities like multi-layer 10-bit 4K video editing on DaVinci Resolve 18 is a very nice experience. You can stack multiple layers and not have to worry about any sort of frame drops or issues in the timeline. It's a super fluid experience, and thanks to a built-in dedicated GPU, you also have super fast render speeds. Now, for those of you who are interested in gaming results, keep in mind this is not technically a gaming machine, it's a creative use machine, but of course that RTX 4060 pumps some amazing graphics. Games like Doom Eternal, for example, can run at the second highest settings and sustain 100 plus FPS all throughout, making good use of that 120 Hz refresh rate. Thermals really made me feel good because, well, under unrealistic peak loads, we only hit a maximum average surface temperature of 42 degrees Celsius, though realistic sustained loads will only yield you around 38 degrees Celsius, which honestly is fairly cool. I suspect the dual fan setup combined with the vapor chamber plays a big role here, but what's even more impressive is that despite all that cooling hardware, peak noise levels only only ever go around 52 decibels, which is quite tame for such a laptop. This is one of those rare examples where thermal management has been executed nearly perfectly on a laptop of this caliber, something we don't see common with a lot of PC laptops too often. You also have plenty of self-upgrade options, so you do get 2 SODIMM DDR5 memory slots which are preoccupied but can be replaced to a maximum of 64 gigabytes. Additionally, you do have 2 PCIe Gen 4 M.2 slots, and one of them is preoccupied, but plenty of storage upgrade options there as well. With a 83 watt-hour battery, in theory you have a pretty large amount of capacity here. However, based on our real-world test, if you're doing streamline or low-load activities, you can expect around 7 hours on a single charge, but do anything even remotely intensive and that number starts dramatically dropping. The speaker system here is pretty decent, so you do get a lot of volume. It's also got no distortion, it's very clear, though I will be honest, it falls a little bit short when compared to the likes of the Dell XPS or of course Apple's MacBook, but still a great sounding experience overall. Here's a quick sound test for reference.
This world ain't never been peaceful. You got good, always butting heads against evil. The good try to be fair, but the bad lethal. They gon' fight dirty, every single one deceitful. Stand up, I wanna see your face. Get your chin up like you belong in this place. We gon' train like you've never trained before. You're going up against some.
With a starting price of $1350 US and going as much as $2250 for this configuration here, the NV16 is a expensive laptop, and its price range is kind of all over the place depending on the configuration you get. On one side, that's great news because you can configure everything from the processor using a lower end i5 all the way to an i9. You can fluctuate with the memory you have as well as the SSD storage on board, and there's plenty of other options. However, there are some consistencies no matter what you get. For example, you get a nice premium laptop with a metallic exterior, a great trackpad and keyboard. However, there are of course issues with this laptop as well, particularly the hinge quality here does have long-term implications in terms of durability problems. Now, beyond that, I will say that the NV16 is specifically a niche laptop. It really benefits anyone who has a powerful creative purpose in mind. So if you're doing photo editing, or for example, if you enjoy doing color grading or you need it from a professional capacity, this laptop is great. But if you're just running after these specs alone, you can get similar specs in cheaper laptops like the HP Victus, for example, which is a gaming laptop, but is actually cheaper, albeit with a much more chunkier and gaming type body. Nonetheless though, the NV16 does bring a lot of value if you have the right use case, and as long as you're willing to cough up the extra premium for the NV series branding. Overall, let me know what you think of the HP NV16. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Catch you in the next one.